Week of February 1st, questions 1 through 4. Waiting for the page to load. Just waiting for the page to load. Oh, come on. All right, so r to the second power means r times r. So if we were to go ahead and expand this, we would have 2r over r to the r. And these guys would cancel out, leaving this like leftover r in the bottom. So you would have 2 over r as your final answer. A quick trick so that you don't have to write it out and cancel is if you have like this r on top with no exponent, put a 1, always a 1 if there's nothing there. And then you just subtract. So this big 2 comes over, nothing can be done with it. And then you subtract. 2 minus 1 is 1. So we're left with r to the 1. But we know it has to go in the bottom because that's where like the original bigger one was. And then of course, we don't write 1s in our final answers. So we have 2 over r. All right, so the same holds true here, right? This big 2, there's no other coefficients, so there's nothing to do with it. And then x to the third over x to the second, you just subtract, right? 3 minus 2 is 1. And it's going to stay on the top because that's where the original bigger exponent is. That's where the leftovers are going to be. And this is pretty sloppy. We don't need a fraction if there's nothing in the denominator. So our final answer is just 2x. Okay, so here we could put, the 1s on it, and then 1 minus 1 is 0, implying that there are exactly 0 r's. Or you could just look at it that we're canceling these out. 3 is left in the denominator, and a 1 is left on top. Here we go. So these, again, just kind of cancel out. Boom, right? Like 2 minus 2 is nothing. There you go. So we have this 3 left on the bottom, and that's where it's at. All right, so I'm going to just keep rolling on through and do all of them. So pause. So question 5, we're going to put the 1. 3 over 2 does not simplify, so it just stays 3 over 2. And then we subtract our exponents. We have a 3 and a 1, so we subtract them. 3 minus 1 is 2, so we have b to the second power somewhere. And we're going to leave it in the bottom because that's where the original bigger exponent was. Okay, those x's just cancel. There you go. We have a 2 in the denominator, but we can't have nothing in the numerator, so we hold its place with a 1. So that's it for question 6. 7. 3 over 2 does not simplify. Subtract your n's. 3 minus 2 is 1. And it's going to stay on the top because that's where the original bigger exponent was. So we're going to have n to the 1, but we don't really write 1s. So to be a little more proper, that's what your final answer looks like. Okay. Now we have 2 over 2, which also just cancel out, right? 2 divided by 2 is 1, and we don't really write 1s unless we're using it as sort of a placeholder. But we do have these n's. 3 minus 2 is 1. It's going to go in the denominator because that's where the bigger one was. But we can't have nothing in the numerator. So it's just 1 over n for question 8. All right, so here we go. Got 3. Nothing can be done. M, 3 minus 2 is 1. And it stays in the top because that's where the original bigger one was. And like you could put this over 1 if you really wanted to, but that's kind of useless. Really, your final answer would just be 3m. We have 3, 2, and then look at that. 2 minus 2 is nothing. So your final answer is just 3 over 2. That was pretty simple. Okay. That big 3 stays here. Nothing we can do with that. And then 3 minus 2 is 1. So we have x to the first power somewhere. We don't really write ones in our final answers, like if it's an exponent. So it's going to just be an x, and it's going to go on top because that's where the original bigger one was. Okay, that was weird. Okay, v divided by v, they cancel, or 1 minus 1, whatever. So your final answer for 12 is pretty straightforward. 2 and the 3 do not simplify. X to the second power over x to the first power. Well, 2 minus 1 is 1. So we're going to have x to the first power somewhere. And we leave them on top because that's where the original bigger one was. Two divided by 2 is 1. B squared divided by B squared is also 1. Anything divided by itself is 1, and we're just canceling everything out. So here, 3 divided by 3 is 1. So those cancel. And then 3 minus 2 is 1. So we're just going to have n to the first power somewhere. But we're going to put it on the bottom and use 1 as a placeholder. Okay, so the 2 is just there. That's a 1. 2 minus 1 is 1. So we're just going to have x to the first power, or just x. And it's going to go on the bottom because that's where the original bigger one was. That's where the leftover x's would end up after canceling. 1 as a numerator. And that is how the February 1st assignment is done.